at the age of 28, navigating a very dynamic and complex business environment. Jeet Adani. How do you define future ready businesses?
I don't think any business model can be future ready, but I think what makes a business future ready, in my view, is the organization.
When you talked about value creation, you did speak about taking a long-term view.
Yeah. It's not easy to take a long-term view, right? So 2 to 3 years, your cash is locked. So the value of that continuity and stability is massive.
Do you think that there is one shift or one change that we ought to make?
A lot of it can be automated with intelligence. I am a huge believer in AI. Some people in my family call me an AI bro. So I can't believe the money I spend on AI.
Welcome back to Future Unplugged. I'm your host, Sanjeev Krishan, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this very special episode of our podcast. In my work, I spend a lot of time with leaders navigating scale and possibly at their most complex. But rarely do I get to speak to someone who's doing that at the age of 28. Our guest today has done just that, living up to an illustrious family name, navigating a very dynamic and complex business environment, and firmly finding his spot in the young leaders to watch out for. It is my pleasure to welcome Jeet Adani. Jeet runs India's largest private airport network, 8 airports, millions of passengers, and a brand new one that opened just last Christmas. He also manages PVC, copper, defense, data centers, and projects across the Adani Group. The business is mid-sprint, a ₹1 trillion capex program, an IPO on the horizon, and a group that's been through some public scrutiny. This is a conversation about what all of that actually demands of a leader. Jeet, thank you so much for joining us. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
So, Jeet, let me just warm it up for the time that we have today, and maybe we'll start with just some 1-minute questions, if I may call it so, right?
Of course.
Get your impressions very briefly. So, the first one, Jeet, how do you define future-ready businesses?
Yeah. Look, I think when I think about, how do you make a business future? I don't think any business model can be future ready because, today we don't know what kind of disruptions are in store for us tomorrow. We've seen one wave of disruptions through COVID, another wave through, the age of AI. But I think what makes a business future ready, in my view, is the organization.
Right.
You need to have an organization and a leadership that is, agile and adaptable in both recognizing and embracing change. If you have that, then whatever business model disruption comes your way, you're sort of able to navigate that.
You spoke about agility and the ability to adopt and change.
Yeah.
These are prophetic words. So the second one, really, how do you look at value creation?
Look, for everyone, it's different. For me and for our family, the philosophy has always been that value creation comes from a couple of things. First is, are you genuinely solving a problem that, your customers face? Are you creating something that is going to last a generation? And that sort of ties into our entire presence on infrastructure. So we're building assets which, on an average have a lifespan of 30 to 50 years.
Right.
So you have to look at value creation not on day one, but through the life cycle of any asset that you're trying to create. And that drives a lot of, internal alignment when it comes to, the kind of quality control that you need when you're setting up something, the way you operate, what are your philosophy of operations, how do you look at cost control, how do you look at customer experience, and so on.
So I know I said 1-minute questions, but I think you used... when you talked about value creation, you did speak about taking a long-term view.
Yeah.
Do you sort of have a sense that at times many of us are not able to take that long-term view for various reasons?
Yeah, it's not easy to take a long term view, right? Because I mean that's the classic case of infrastructure. I mean you invest 100 rupees today, your cash flow is going to be 15-20 rupees.
Right.
It's you're not going to get, and that is also after a gestation period of creating the asset. So say it takes 2 to 3 years to create something. So 2 to 3 years your cash is locked versus, and after that you're earning 10-15% return. It's not like a trading business or a software business where you build and you're able to generate outsized returns very quickly. But the benefit of this is that with infrastructure specifically is that it's a stable return throughout, so the value of that continuity and stability is massive.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to build on. But that's sort of where, I mean, each person is different. I mean,
Yeah.
each person's risk appetite is different, but that's how at least we look at it, and that's how the group has grown.
So we will talk about infrastructure and, of course, the areas that you are focused on. But let me very quickly go to the second segment of this, and which is now, next, and never. So the first one on the now, what do you think is really, what is actually, should I say, the reality of creating big businesses, which we must accept today?
Yeah. So look, you're creating a big business. The landscape around, how you build an organization has fundamentally shifted. It may not have shifted completely in India, but if you look at it globally, the way people are thinking about organizational design with the kind of technology and AI that we have today is fundamentally different. People are expecting the organization to be way more productive than what it was 5 or 6 years ago. And that's also important. So when we think about it, a couple of things that we've started is we have a massive delayering exercise where we want to create the entire organization fixed on 3 layers of hierarchy. And that's not because of a mandate or cost cutting, but on 2 things. One is, how do we increase productivity? How do we increase accountability? But at the same time, by delayering, we give them more responsibility and power to take decision.
Right.
And that's the sort of downward delegation that we're working on. So that's where when you think about organizational design, that's fundamentally shifted. The other thing about building a big or large business is that you are going to be operating now in a globally competitive market.
Yeah.
The benchmark is no longer just the country or the area you are in, but people have access to information, people have access to technology. So you have to strive much harder to be placing yourself in a globally competitive position, even if not on day one, but at least have a clear ramp towards where you want to go. But that's what the people's expectation is much higher now.
Right. So that's the now, and I think clearly we need to embrace many of the shifts that you mentioned. If I were to talk about the next, yes, we talk about shifts, and you spoke about embracing change and agility and so on and so forth. Do you think that there is one shift or one change that we ought to make? It could be technology, which you just mentioned, or embracing different ways of doing the same thing, right? Which we must adopt if we need to, score well on all the KPIs that you spoke about.
I think 2 things. One is we should know where to not get involved.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of inertia, especially in large organizations where, just because it's been done a certain way and there are certain people doing certain things, it continues.
Right.
In today's day and age, a lot of it can be automated. And now you can even automate it with intelligence, not just, robotic automation. And that's where I think that adoption, and you're seeing this adoption in newer companies. Companies which are young, launched within the last 5 years, they have been built in an AI native environment. And that's where large businesses like ourselves have to accept that this change is coming.
Right.
And have the right strategy and execution of how do we adopt it in the right way. But at the same time, this is something we were talking about earlier, is sovereignty at a large scale becomes a very important angle.
Sure.
That how do you balance speed, security, consumer quality, and sovereignty across all 3? Right. And this is always, it's a tough line to balance.
Yeah.
But that's the most important thing.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, I would get on to, and we will talk a little bit more about these things because very important topics that you touched upon. But just the one thing in your experience and your learning, we already created a scaled business. The aspirations are far wider, far bigger. What is the one thing that you think which may have worked, let's say, 10 years back, 5 years back, but you don't think will work in the next 5 or the next 10?
I'll speak of it in our context. I think one thing that, fundamentally for the group, we are focusing a lot on, and we've made a substantial amount of progress over the last 10 years, is how do we create institutional processes?
Right.
So rather than being individual or single leader dependent, where if you get a right CEO, you're able to push the business, but if the CEO is not right, the business struggles. That shouldn't be the case. I think your institutional systems need to be, far stronger and remove that sort of single person bias. And that's something that we've worked on. And I think for any organization that is entering a mature growth phase, that is increasingly important. And at scale, if you don't have that, things just break down.
Yeah.
Because you lose governance, you lose the assurance on your process, and sort of decision making has no accountability.
Yeah.
So I think setting up an institutional process system is very important. The second thing what I would say is, more generally and not sort of related to the group, is we have to think tech native. I mean, even if you're in the most traditional business, you have to be tech native because that's the world we live in today.
Yeah.
And there was a time and age where technology was a thing of, spending when you have money, but then when your business is not doing well, you sort of cut down on everything. And again, that speaks a lot to discipline, where, the projects you are trying to do are just not value additive. But if you're fundamentally thinking through, when you're creating your business, when you're thinking through the business plan and your business model, if technology is not a fundamental part of your operational expertise, you will lose out.
Yeah. So I think it's not a good to have, it's a must.
It's a must, 100%. It's a must. We've passed that stage.
Yeah. Got it. Very clear. Now maybe let's move on to maybe some of the core of our discussions. And I really want to, you've been leading the group's foray into infrastructure at large, but specifically airports. I'll discuss infrastructure as well, but it's been a wonderful story, and congratulations on the Navi Mumbai airport, which got launched last Christmas. But the first question which comes to mind is that, running an airport as opposed to constructing an airport, two very different things, right? Two different skill sets required. How has the group navigated this? Because running an airport is very, very different. And, you are in the process of, doing new airports. At the same time, you're running them, and operational efficiency, etc., are coming in many of those. So how do you distinguish the two?
Look, these are two fundamentally different things, but they're very interconnected.
Yeah.
But I'll take you back to day one. We actually inherited airports which are already running.
Right.
So from zero, we had to build in that capability of how do you manage to keep the show going. And what we've learned from that, and one of the things that was extremely important even when we were executing Navi Mumbai, is while project execution and operations are separate, but they can't work without one another. The way your operations run, again, like I said, how do you use technology? What is your hospitality philosophy? What is your maintenance philosophy? What kind of basic consumer experiences are you looking for? These are decisions that inherently go into the brief of the design of the airport. So if you don't have a clarity and experience on running an airport well, you will not be able to design it well. So it goes back to design thinking, right? You have to design for your customer, you have to design for your stakeholders.
Yeah.
So that's where I would say that they are interlinked. Project execution on executing on new airports is a beast of its own.
Yeah.
It's and Navi Mumbai is a beast of a beast.
Right.
You had a mountain there, you had a river there, and completely greenfield site. So setting that up from zero was extremely challenging, but we're happy that it started now.
Right.
That's where 2-3 things in execution matter a lot. The first and foremost is, do you have the right partners? We're working with some of the best construction and EPC partners in the industry. More than just that, we're working with some of the best global design partners. So how are we looking at the next generation of airport design?
Sure.
So what is the global best standard? What are people thinking about globally? These are sort of best practices that we are trying to bring in. Inherently, we're an Indian business. So we won't have exposure to what US airport or European airport is doing in terms of the infrastructure itself. So that's where those two things become extremely important, and obviously having the risk appetite and the ability to manage stakeholder relationships well. That's sort of the winning sauce that allows you to execute at the right speed and scale. And I think fundamentally, as an organization, our ability to manage external risks
Yeah.
and our ability to push our team and our partners and align them and be able to take certain risks in a controlled manner at the execution stage has allowed us to keep executing. So
Right.
that's where I would say, while operations and execution are different,
Right.
they're interlinked, but each of them has their own nuances, 100%.
So Jeet, I'd like to dwell a little deeper on this, right?
Yeah.
There have been many groups, etc., which have done fantastic job in putting up infrastructure. Let me put it that way, right? But interacting with the customer or creating a B2C business for many who have been very successful in B2B businesses has not been the easiest thing. The Adani Group is starting to navigate that really well. I mean, with the connect that you have with the customer, and you're trying to now put the customer at the center of what your future value proposition is. Tell us a little bit more about this shift.
So I'll tell you, it's more complicated than that, because airports it's a B2B with the airlines, it's a B2C with the passenger, and it's a B2G with our stakeholders.
Right.
So you're trying to create all three at the same time.
Right.
So what's very important, at least on the G and B part, is you need to have early alignment. That before you start executing, and where things break down normally is you've made something and then you go and show it and say like, no, like it's made already now.
Right.
Now please approve it, or please come and fit yourselves in it.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you don't have early alignment. But thankfully, because of the relationship that we've garnered by operating the airports, we've been able to sort of bring the G and B elements on board early.
Right.
So how do we plan early with our airlines in terms of how their route network looks like, what kind of planes are they going to be getting in, how confident are they? So that helps with how much infrastructure you have to build out. In terms of their own customers, in terms of their operating philosophy, are they, each airline is doing it slightly differently. So, having an alignment on how they are going to be operating, they're going to be running their operations at each airport helps in our design as well. And same thing on the B2G element, where what is the next generation of rules and regulations that are being looked at? Where are they pushing in terms of technology? Can we partner on some of that things also? Can we be the first place you pilot some of these things? And so all of that sort of goes into the initial design itself. But at the same time, we do realize all of this is very flexible.
Right.
So when we design, we build in that flexibility, that how do we design in a way that if a generational shift happens 2 or 3 times, because the building is there for 30 years. So you have to sort of build in the flexibility in the engineering that you are able to cater to that generational shift, either in technology or in operations. When it comes to consumer, our relentless focus is on consumer research. So we initially moved from, when we started, we just were taking in industry reports, very generic. Then we started hiring a couple of agencies to do research for us. And now we've started doing our own. So we focus a lot on primary research as to what kind of customers are coming, where are their pain points. We call it the voice of the customer.
Right.
So through agencies plus our own team, plus secondary research, we sort of have a good idea of where customers face a lot of issues. What are they looking for? How are their consumption patterns changing? How are their behavior patterns changing? And that plays a lot in creating this, because obviously, again, with flexibility built in, but you're able to give them a product that they appreciate.
I mean, you would expect from a consumer that he would like to just zip in and go to his aircraft and make it, and maybe buy something on the way if he or she wishes they're missing something on a holiday or on a business trip. But I mean,
but that's not it, right? Because you can have a 85-year-old person also traveling with a family, someone solo, a child traveling. So you have to design for a very wide spectrum.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that brings me to another critical element, actually 2 of them. And maybe I'll pick up the first one, which was, you mentioned the whole part about the ecosystem and the B2G particularly. At times working with the ecosystem, where decisions get made, and hopefully they're very, very, very robust, but they take a lot of time, right? And when they get made, realigning your business to the decisions that have got made, and making sure that not only are we compliant, but we are actually trying to create value thereafter for a group that itself, that you are so fast, you're so quick in your execution, etc. Does it? I take the point about early engagement and stuff like that, and the credibility. But does it still create any fissures or tensions?
Tension is always there because a government process is meant to be way more robust because it takes in 100 different viewpoints to come to a decision.
Sure.
And there is a reason for that, and we respect that.
Right.
For us, we are looking at it maybe from a narrower viewpoint that is limited to our ecosystem.
Yeah.
But what we always align on, when I talked about alignment, is the logic.
Right.
That, okay, what is the most important thing for you? If you're looking at security, for example, that India is one of the only places that has 100% scanning and 100% pat down. So while everyone complains, we can go and ask them that, why are you looking at it in this way? We understand where they're coming from, and they say, okay, cool. We understand that this will continue. So we then plan for it.
Right.
But if it's something where their logic is, look, this is something that was older, we're looking at ways to improve it, then we engage.
Right.
That, okay, look, let us get the best technology, let's get the best SOPs, let's pilot it, let's run it. And if it works, then you can actually implement it across a wider scale.
Yeah.
And that's where the alignment on logic comes in. Right. That why are certain decisions being taken in a certain way, with what context?
Right.
And that's what's important. That's normally how we've always, if it's DGCA, Airports Authority, BCAS, CISF, we fundamentally understand or try to understand what are their organizational complexities, what are their decision-making complexities, what is their biggest sort of priority in when they're making any decision. Yeah. And we respect that.
Yeah. And I'm sure that your success at that has been a significant enabler for the value creation that has happened.
Oh, absolutely. See, look, at an airport, I joke about this, that while you own and operate an airport, you don't really operate anything.
Yeah.
Because 90% of the operations is either sovereign or airline.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But then that brings me to the other part, which is the part that hopefully you have a little bit more control on, which is the consumer, the access that consumer gets. And then let me just talk about the non-aero revenues, which become a very significant component, right? Because that there is a lot of retail and so on and so forth. It's like a cricket team where a lot of revenues come from broadcast revenues, etc., etc. But they have to manage the players and the BCCI and so on and so forth. So how do you look at that composition playing into your?
Before I answer, the important thing that we has to be there in context is India is going through 3 different waves.
Right.
You have a wave of the luxury, which is now going ultra luxury.
Right.
People who want extremely bespoke things, extremely private sort of settings, or extremely flashy sort of offerings. Then you have the very large middle class moving towards aspiration. They have access to credit, they have access to better financing, they have their own net worth has been increasing steadily over the last 10-15 years.
Sure.
And because of that, they are now seeking to go towards luxury, but at the right value.
Right.
And then you have a huge amount of people who are also converting from bus, trains to air travelers. First time.
But are value conscious, I suppose.
Extremely value conscious. So when we design our entire non-aero, this entire shift change is something that we have to be very careful about. Right. That there needs to be a product for the most value conscious consumer. And this is a consumer who is most likely, for the first time traveling at an airport, is scared, has never stepped foot on a flight before, is very confused by seeing these huge buildings or seeing these fancy shops. But how do we make sure that that person, he or she, is comfortable? And that is the foremost thing. If that person is comfortable and then they wish to engage in commerce, then there should be a value conscious offering. But the first and foremost thing for the first time flyer is that the comfort level is there, because that is how you assure that it's a lifetime repeat customer. Then when it comes to the sort of middle class aspirational people, for them value, but they are still willing to pay a premium, but at the right value. So that is the biggest part of our offering.
Right.
How are we moving from sort of standardized things to sort of more personalized without fundamentally altering a lot of the price. So getting them to buy more rather than buy more expensive.
Right.
And that's a shift that we've started seeing by offering things which other airports or other places in the country don't offer. Is it special products, special brands? And that's how we started curating it. And then for the ultra luxury, I mean, the more you do, I mean, it's always less because, they've seen the world, they have seen best of the best.
Right.
And we have to keep pushing that envelope. But our biggest focus is the middle class that is becoming aspirational.
Right.
And when it comes to, so all of these gets designed into what we call as our rental retail mix. So no airport is standardized when it comes to what brands go in, what concepts go in, how you're looking at the customer experience. Each one is customized for its own catchment.
Yeah.
So Ahmedabad has a different consumer profile, a consumer mix. Mumbai has a different one. Even between Mumbai and Navi Mumbai, it's different.
Yeah.
So we tailor our entire product offering based on that specific consumer mix. One of the things we tell brands is don't give us something that is cookie cutter.
Right.
Because that makes me no different from buying something outside. And generally people know that airports are 10-15% more expensive than everywhere else. So you have to give them that value.
Yeah.
If you're giving the same thing that is just more expensive, then it doesn't give them that value. And the other thing that we're doing is a lot of white labeling for the value conscious consumer.
Right.
Where we're able to give products for basic products, nothing fancy, basic necessities at the same or cheaper cost than outside.
Right.
So that's sort of how we are mixing this. Yeah.
So when we look at consumer, Jeet, I had just one more question. I think we typically categorize the consumer as tier 1, tier 2, cities, towns, and so on and so forth. Do you think that's the right way to look at it?
I don't think so at all. So it's very interesting because of our airport portfolio, we operate in tier 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in tier 2 and tier 3 that actually shop more than tier 1.
Right.
Because tier 1 at an airport specifically has sort of that level of access outside in tier 1. But for tier 2 and tier 3, when you introduce something that is exclusive or unique, they have the capacity to spend.
Right.
And they just needed the right thing to spend on.
Right.
And we're seeing this, in places like Guwahati, Lucknow, Mangalore, Trivandrum, where for the right product, people are really spending a good amount of money.
Right. Right. So do you think it's also generational because, there's
It is, yeah. It's generational shift on two things. My generation spends a lot more on experience.
Right.
Rather than, look, I have this shoe or I have this perfume or something. They want that experience that of the purchase, but also an experience in terms of dining or in terms of entertainment.
Right.
And that's one fundamental shift. But also savings versus spending, that is a larger shift that we're seeing in the country with our generation being more spending focused than on saving focused.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that I was reading some statistics somewhere that domestic travel, domestic holidaying has gone up significantly in recent times. So, I mean, I'm sure the customer is becoming very central to the whole theme of the airport business. But just moving on the same segment a little bit more, Jeet. I mean, airports, we saw them evolving eventually as platforms now, but more also as an ecosystem because, where in the city are they located and what do they do to the city infrastructure is also something which is now becoming very relevant. How do you see that?
So, this is like historically, it's always been like this. Early on in history, it was railway stations.
Right.
That, railway stations, if you look anywhere in the world, railway stations are the heart of the city. And the city sort of grew around it. The central business district grew around it and then sort of expanded as, modern transportation came alive. What we're seeing with airports is exactly the same sort of shift because most of the places, airports are becoming a central or one of the most important nodes of transportation in the city.
Right.
So you obviously have intercity transportation, but for intracity, so if it's metro, buses, obviously cars and highway connectivity, everything sort of intersects at the airport precinct.
Right.
And, and Mumbai is a very classic example of this. We have 3 metro stations, 2 metro lines, a third one is being added, direct connectivity on Western Expressway. So it's become very central. And Navi Mumbai is also another example, even though it's not fully played out yet. But from a planning point of view, you have water, highway, high-speed rail, metro, everything connected in one place. So
Right.
because these are like such interconnected places, naturally there's a lot of flow that comes
Right.
through it.
Right.
And when you have a lot of flow, that opens up a massive opportunity to develop, real estate. And that's one of our growth levers when we look at the airport business is how do we, monetize and create sustainable, vibrant district at all of the airports.
Right.
So our focus is, how do we look at entertainment? So it's like the live, work, play concept, right? So we want people to be able to live in the precinct with our hospitality projects. We want people to work, so with our commercial real estate, and with entertainment, retail, that plays out the play concept.
Right.
So that's how we're thinking about it. Broadly, between all of our assets, I mean, we have about 300 million square feet of development potential. The biggest one, obviously, being between Mumbai and Navi Mumbai. And that's where what we're spending a lot of time on. We've already started making a lot of these. So Ahmedabad, Jaipur, Mumbai, Navi Mumbai, and Guwahati are already under construction, and Lucknow, already under construction. And we'll start seeing these assets come online in late 28, 29. And then every year we'll have, a couple of million square feet of development coming online.
So significant value capture ahead.
A massive value capture, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So, Jeet, if I were to just move to the broader infra story for a little bit, historically, if you look at it, and airports possibly are a great example, but historically, infrastructure was all about planning, building, and moving on to the next one, right? I mean, you have now, of course, done forward integration to make sure that, you're able to capture the value beyond just the building of it. But there are still some headwinds at times, right? I mean, if you look at it, not many assets are operated and managed as well, right? So there's a huge opportunity there, which you have done very well. But do you see, let me just say, what do you see are the structural challenges that India hasn't done so well on some of those counts?
I think it started with mindset. Most of the large infrastructure creators had operated from a construction mindset.
Yeah.
And India is a great amount of great construction companies.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of respect for them. But it's a very different mindset of owning an asset as a developer versus constructing an asset.
Yeah.
It goes back to what we were talking about, that do you have a short-term mindset or long-term? I mean, both are right. There's no right and wrong. But when you're looking at owning an infrastructure asset, which is a 50-year lifespan, there's a lot more that goes into it than just the construction.
Right.
When you design it, are you running it the way you designed it? Are you maintaining it the way you designed it? Are you upgrading it the way it is supposed to be? Are you making sure that technology integration happens as technology progresses? And are you sweating the asset?
Right.
Because these things come from deep operational expertise and not just infrastructure expertise, construction expertise. And that's where I think fundamentally the change is different. If you look at a couple of our examples, Mumbai Airport, from when we acquired to now, we've seen a massive increase in EBITDA margins. Gangavaram Port, after we acquired, we've seen a massive EBITDA improvement. And that's been, our ability also to be able to acquire assets where we see there's a lot of value that's being left on the table and then sweating the asset out. So that's where, for us at least, that opportunity continues. So, M&A is a big part of our growth story.
Yeah.
But as an advice that anyone else who wants to get into infrastructure is you need to have a long-term mindset.
Long-term.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So, Jeet, I mean, two things which always come to mind is with all the shifts that are happening now, there is everything which is being done as a service, right? I mean, SaaS, of course, is there. But how do you look at infrastructure as a service?
Yeah. No, infrastructure is a service. Look, today people and consumers don't experience, I would say, an asset. Or, when they're traveling by road, they're not experiencing, you've bait this road.
Yeah.
They are experiencing every pothole, every misalignment, every sort of delay. Or if it's an airport, even the smallest things.
Yeah.
Right? Washroom is smelling, it's wet, this, that. So it's really a service mindset.
Yeah.
And when you look at, when you are operating assets, you need to have a service mindset. And this is a fundamental philosophical change that happens. With airports, one of the big things is our staffing and our teams. So we're making sure that, because that's one of the largest consumer touch points, human to human,
Yeah.
is what is the experience every consumer gets when they interact with one of our staff, even if, they're off role, because that changes the experience for them. One quality mishap is that customer is lost for me.
Yeah.
So these kind of things have become increasingly important. While they still pay us an infrastructure charge, they don't pay us a service charge.
Yeah.
And we are regulated as infrastructure. We have to operate with a service mindset.
Yeah. So there are, because it's infrastructure as a service. There are customers which are experiencing it. There are multiple stakeholders. There's also possibly the need to make sure that some of these things are designed very well, because you've thought through many of these things. And in design, I think one of the things that you touched upon very briefly earlier was that how do we design it well, but also leverage technology in able to do so. So how do you see that, Jeet?
Fundamentally, we've moved past that point where it's an option, like we said. Everything has to be connected. If you don't have technology embedded in your systems, in your physical and operational systems, you are going to be doing maintenance by gut, and you're going to be doing reactive maintenance, which spoils the asset. At the end of the day, something shuts off, you have downtime. And if you don't, so that's why sensorization, Internet of Things, and then a sort of integration platform on top, which fuses all the data from different sources, and that's increasingly important. There's people doing it. We are doing it as well now. But it's a fundamental part of the design. So when we work with our partners, this is a non-negotiable. So again, on day one, along with operations, digital infrastructure plan has to be a part of the design.
So one question I have to ask you, Jeet, considering whether it is airports, ports, even roads, I mean, it's like always on, right? Infrastructure as a service,
it has to be
you're always on, right? And the small moment that there is a problem or there's a delay or there's a stoppage, the nation is stopping. Does it create additional pressure on?
Of course, it's a pressure, but also it's a responsibility, right? It's a part of our decision making. When you're if it was a private asset, shut this down, change this overnight, break things, it's okay. You can't have that mindset here. Like you can't have the mindset of if it doesn't break, it's not right. So when you're trying to do change has to be way more managed, way more sort of risk averse and incremental. So that's one of the things, with AI implementation, we look at ideal state, it should just run everything. I mean, if the way its capabilities are increasing, we shouldn't need humans to make decisions. It should be able to take decisions by itself. But in an environment as sensitive as an airport, as we speak today, we don't have the confidence to just let it run free. So wherever even we are implementing, we still have human oversight to guide it. So will there be a time where it's possible? I definitely think so. I'm a big believer. So but we have to be very measured.
So Jeet, I think on that note, maybe two other elements that I want to talk about. One is you mentioned technology and AI. I gather that you yourself dabble in AI quite a bit and recently made an app or something with your team.
I'm a very big power user. I can't believe the money I spend on AI. It's and I still hit my limits. But like I do it in my free time. But more importantly, I see it as a way to challenge our teams. So when a team comes back to me and says they want to spend X crores trying to hire XYZ people, third-party consultants, they will develop something. And that my fundamental question is why? Like today you don't have to do it. And second is prototyping. A lot of prototyping can be done extremely quickly within a couple of days, if not hours. And these things, Claude or Cursor or Anthropic, these guys make it extremely robust. So it's not something that is, half-heartedly designed. It's something that is a proper system stack when you build something. And you can deploy it, which is what I did, by the way. I broke a lot of cyber rules within the company, but just to prove a point that this can be done. I try to do it, and that it's not a way to put pressure, but just to demonstrate to think differently. That
Right.
don't get stuck in what everyone else is doing, and a way to also encourage people that if I can do it, please try yourselves.
Yeah.
That just because you are not a IT professional or don't have a background doesn't. In today's world, you don't need a
Anybody
background.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just need curiosity. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm trying to do a agent myself in my office. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you doing it, leading from the top, actually will galvanize your teams to be able to
Yeah.
leverage tech in a very different way. But I've just one more question in this segment, Jeet, and which is really because everybody is talking about this right now. I mean, it's all pervasive, right? And with Claude and everything else, even more so. But are there certain areas where you think you would not want to leverage AI or tech?
Look, I am a huge believer in AI. Some people in my family call me an AI bro. So, but I wouldn't want to write off anything today.
Right.
Because honestly speaking, no one knows the rate of change of these systems. And you saw it with the classic example when Anthropic released Mythos.
Yeah.
I mean, no one could have expected it to be as powerful. It has cracked some of the most advanced security systems. It has found vulnerabilities in things which were supposed to be or believed to be extremely hardened. So I wouldn't write off any capability. What I would say is, as it stands today,
Yeah.
like I was saying, I would not give it free for all control on everything.
Yeah.
In things as critical as operations.
Yeah.
When it comes to sort of enterprise decision making, it can be a guiding force. And when it comes to sort of process automation, that is where it can excel already very well, where
Right.
it can run completely unguided.
Right.
And there's a couple of things we're working on to do exactly that, where it can be AI can take customer calls, make customer cold calls, contact vendors, because you have it speaks in natural voice now. You won't be able to tell a difference.
Yeah.
And negotiates things, closes POs, closes a PR,
Yeah.
issues the PO, does the payments, make sure the entire goods delivery is happening. So the end-to-end process is completely automated then.
Yeah.
And what a human does is just manages process integrity, so and improves the process over time, which AI also would be able to do. But I think right now, just for peace of mind, right now that's human oversight is there. But a human doesn't go into individual steps.
Yeah.
And that's where that's what we are doing already today.
Yeah.
And as we go forward and as we get to know more about AI capabilities, I would be more and more comfortable to give more critical things.
Yeah. So, Jeet, we spoke about AI and tech, and I think you made some points about where you're comfortable, where you're not. Tech is one critical enabler. Capital is another.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk a little bit about capital in the future, because you are in a very capital-intensive business as well. We have read, some plans about capital raising and, refinancing and so on and so forth about business. But from your perspective, considering the capital requirements of your business, how do you see the evolution of capital for your business? Not in terms of cost, but in terms of the, let me say, the portfolio of investors that you possibly will be dealing with. And are there something that people who are trying to do similar things should watch out for?
Yeah. So discipline. I mean, look, when we talk about capital, the most important thing is discipline. If you are not disciplined in how you raise or spend your capital, you can end up in a soup, as time has tested again and again. For us, we are in this transition phase. So if as a group as a whole, we've gone through different stages as any business goes through. There was a stage where we are severely capital constrained, and when I say capital, also capital availability constrained. And we had to manage with what we had, try to sweat every cent and dollar and rupee that was there, and build what we could. Then we had a period where availability was not a constraint, but what it required was expanding the sources.
Yeah.
So diversifying sources of capital to reduce risk, a single party risk. And that was from 2010 to 2020. The entire evolution of capital markets in our overall capital structure, and with it also brought in a different change in terms of governance and in terms of what we need to do when it comes to statutory on best practices.
Yeah,
rather.
yeah.
And now we're in a phase where we're approaching now, where we will have more cash flow being generated from the businesses than businesses will know what to do with. So, which is a great problem to have, but also very scary, because what you have to be very careful of is you don't invest in the wrong areas. So, you have to have unbelievable discipline in controlling projects, controlling investments, making sure that they're not dilutive to your overall value, and that's what we look at, what we're setting up for. And broadly, that's how we look at capital. If someone new coming in, starting something, I would say just have that discipline, because it can go very wrong if you don't have discipline. And discipline does not mean don't take risk. Take risk which you know you can manage.
Yeah.
Take calculated risks. Don't take punting risks.
Yeah.
And align your capital structure to your business.
Yeah.
Because every business has differing characteristics. And airports is a very different business from thermal power. It's very different from renewable to transmission to manufacturing.
Sure.
And each one has to have its own capital built up. That's broadly how we think about it. Within the airports business, yes, we have a large capital expenditure plan. We have about 1 lakh crores of capex over the next 5.5 years. Majority of that going to the new Navi Mumbai expansion.
Sure.
But we are very focused, and so like I said from our conversation, airports is a regulated business, it's a consumer business, and it's a real estate business. Yeah. And we don't view it consolidated. Each business also has to have capital efficiency within itself.
Got it.
And each business has to be driven by its own metrics, has to reinvest its own cash flows. The only place where we allow some leeway is the regulated business can still invest over its own cash flows, because that's a fundamental service requirement.
Right.
Where if I don't invest, then service quality deteriorates or capacity doesn't grow.
Yeah. So, Jeet, again, two very important aspects which came to my mind as you were talking. One, you spoke about governance and institutionalization, etc., which I think the group certainly has been on that path. It's not easy at times, right? I mean, there are so many people who have different expectations from the provider. How has the group evolved in managing the expectations of the capital providers and the various other regulators which go with it?
So, at least in investors, we are very careful as to who we get on the cap table.
Yeah.
At least on the unlisted side. Because it's like any startup, right? You don't want money for the sake of money. You want smart money, and we are very lucky to have so far have gotten partners who've been able to who are aligned, but also more importantly have pushed us to improve on various things, on operation. They have contributed a lot on operational expertise, on engineering expertise, on business model, on opportunity, and various things. This goes back all the way from Wilmar to as new as Edge Connects, which is our joint venture partner on data centers. And this is something that is fundamental, because an investment is like a marriage, right? You don't want to be stuck with something which you later regret. So you need to have a lot of clarity on who you're bringing to the cap table. When it comes to larger alignment with regulators, with public market investors, so there are certain things which we treat as non-negotiable, and we took this decision pre-2020 that we are going to follow the world standard in terms of certain governance. We are not going to follow India standard,
right?
Because our investors are global. And what that means is how we constitute our board, what are the policies that are there, or how do we constitute our committees, what kind of information and disclosures we give out, and those kind of things become extremely important. And we've strived to continue to achieve that. The second part is around value maximization. That the biggest constant question that gets asked is, look, you have a very large infrastructure group. Each one is a separate listed entity, but each one can draw sort of best practices from one another. So classic example is data centers require power. We have a deep expertise in power distribution, transmission, as well as renewable and conventional generation. Now these are four different entities, four different listed entities, but we look at it from value maximization at each front. Today, it can't be that just because data center is plus or minus one, everyone else destroys value. We need to look at what is the best solution each one can get.
Right.
And if we are able to bring that solution across the board, only then we do cross transactions. So logistics serves a lot of cement, and that's because we were able to bring down the logistics cost by almost 30%.
Right.
And if we had gone out, I would have obviously lost the revenue on logistics, but also I wouldn't have gotten that cost reduction.
Got it.
So that's how we really look at it. And when you have that intent, you automatically have a lot of alignment.
So does that mean that there is a stepwise forward integration and stepwise backward integration happening all the time to maximize?
That is happening, but at the same time now, because of these two capabilities, there are new opportunities that are coming up.
Right.
So cement was a classic example where coal and logistics are my largest cost factors. And because of our deep expertise in both of those businesses, the minute we acquired, we've been able to reduce our cost almost 40%.
Right. And now, of course,
that's a real reduction.
Yeah. And now, of course, the group is foraying into areas like defense and data centers and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Those must be big bets as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and also possibly very aligned to India's aspiration.
So that's been a fundamental policy. Wherever India's aspiration is as a country, what is important for the country and is being pushed, we will align. And we will go big in every sector.
Right. Jeet, I think this has been a very thought-provoking conversation also for me. And, I think I learned a lot. But there is this last segment and there are a few questions that I thought I must pick up with you because we need to know Jeet the person a little bit. Yeah. So if I may, the first question, Jeet, is that what does Jeet the person do when he is not creating assets and building value and maximizing value?
I don't know. Try to get some time off to watch a movie or something.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I enjoy what I do. I think that fundamentally makes me not feel tired very often.
Right.
That being said, there's always tough days.
Right.
And for me, a way to unwind is watch a movie or spend time with family.
Right. Do you travel a lot, or
as
on holidays and stuff?
On holidays,
do you manage to get some time off?
Yeah, I do. I do manage to get some time off, but and this is where I'm 28, and I see people my age take way more time off.
Yeah.
I'm sure people in your organization my age also take way more time off, but no, I try to make the most of whatever I can. Yeah.
Right. Jeet, one more on this, and again, would love to get your views. How's it been to grow in a household where Gautam Bhai has created this empire, and your whole family actually, you're all together. I mean, it's something that this concept is something which is so natural to us Indians, right? In some ways, but with people like Gautam Bhai and the struggles that they had and where they have got to, what has been like to grow with him?
I would say tough but rewarding. Tough because, on a lighter note, I'm never off work, right? I'm living with my boss, so it's always 24/7 on, and I can't even tell you how many nights I've been woken up at 2:30, 3 o'clock at night, and he's still up,
right?
And he's asking me something about work. But extremely rewarding because look, this is an inherent part of life now. Right? This is what excites me, what makes me wake up every day is what challenge is there to solve. What can we do next? And having him there as a mentor and just being around him has you just absorb so much
Yeah.
in terms of thought process, in terms of just mindset. And a lot of the things that we've spoken about has come from there.
Right.
He's been the one who's set this up, grown this, is driving it to the next stage now. And as the next generation, as we are taking up leadership now, I'm very glad that we were able to get this time and the guidance and wisdom from him, so that we are at least aligned to him. Because normally when you look at this, is the biggest risk in family business, where
Yeah.
you go from first generation to second generation to third generation. It's sort of shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves, right?
Yeah.
You don't really that's the biggest risk. So being around him and seeing a lot of the struggles, I mean, it's been every decade there's been a major struggle that we've gone through, and just seeing his outlook on how to navigate. And honestly, we all get stressed. He never takes stress, and that's one of the biggest learnings from him, that his fundamental belief is that if intent is right, it will be okay. You do things with the right intent, no one can ever question you. And so that's where that's one of my biggest learnings from him. And yeah, just being able to handle stress and just pushing through.
Yeah, I can certainly vouch for that. And nation building, I mean, this is a cause, this is all towards nation building, and that's been wonderful. But one last thing I must say, does that also the success of Gautam Bhai and what he has created, and for you as a son, and for you as a next generation, is it also intimidating at times?
I don't think it's intimidating. I think it's more just gives you perspective as to the kind of responsibility you have.
Right.
I mean, you're not in a position to. I mean, I'm not in a position that most 28-year-olds would be in. I don't think anyone in our second generation is in a position anyone in their respective ages at. You have more than 40,000 people directly working for us, all of our labor, all of our partners. So you have this massive hundreds of thousands of people's ecosystem that are directly being driven by the actions of the family. And what the family's philosophy is changes them. And that's the responsibility that just gives you that context. And it's very interesting, just seeing Dad's outlook on something as small as labor. How they live. Things like, actually, unless I wouldn't have seen him think through that, I would have never thought of that.
Right.
And just what type of housing are they living in? When they come to our site, what are the facilities they are getting? Why are they upset? Are they getting their money on time? Are they getting to go home on time? So things that, as a commercially minded person, you will never think of. But as a leader, that's
So
the
important.
change.
Yeah.
So these are the small examples, but that's the context. I mean, it's a massive responsibility.
Wonderful. Jeet, I have to say that, the maturity beyond your years that you're showing, I think for many of the people who might be watching and in your age bracket, I think that's simply inspirational. And Jeet, this has been really a very, very valuable conversation. And I say this not just because I'm the host, but as someone who spends a lot of time thinking about the same questions from a different vantage point. For our audience, leaders who think about capital, governance, and scale from their own positions, I think there is a great deal in this conversation to sit with. Thank you for joining us. This is PwC India's Future Unplugged.